The Galactic Empire announced the extermination of the human colony on New Canaan 3, with the same sterile enthusiasm one might reserve for a quarterly report. Across the galaxy, transmission screens shimmered with the face of High Chancellor Valeth, her scales polished to a diplomatic sheen. She spoke of corrective measures, preserving galactic civility, and the unfortunate necessity of moral hygiene. The assembly of alien delegates applauded in several languages, each a different version of self-congratulation. No one mentioned that the colony had been composed mostly of farmers and children. No one mentioned that the humans had never fired a shot. The Chancellor's final words, "We trust this will remind the Terrans of their place," floated into the cosmos like a casual curse. When General Marin Holt received the news aboard the flagship Fair Warning, she simply stirred her coffee. Steam curled lazily over the rim of her chipped mug, the words "world's nicest sociopath" glinting faintly under the bridge lights. Around her, junior officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected fury, maybe even tears. Instead, Holt took a slow sip, exhaled, and muttered, "Well, that's inconvenient." Her second-in-command, a quiet man named Reyes, finally spoke. "Orders from Earth, ma'am?" "Diplomacy," she replied, voice calm as glass. "Apparently, we're still the civilized ones." She set her mug down, the sound sharp against the metal table. "Tell the Council I'll attend the summit on Elithra Prime. Wouldn't want to appear rude." 3 days later, the general walked into the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, a human alone among a sea of beings who would have cheerfully dissected her if it weren't politically unfashionable. The room smelled faintly of ozone and smugness. Marble-white Elithrans glistened beside feathered Tharkans, who preened their necks in ritual superiority. A cluster of Zynths hovered in gelatinous unity near the ceiling, telepathic hums brushing against minds like silk threads. All of them turned as Marin Holt approached, unarmed, smiling, impeccable in her dark uniform. "General Holt of Earth," announced the Chancellor, her voice oily with condescension. "How fortunate that you could join us under such delicate circumstances." Marin inclined her head. "Traffic through subspace is murder lately," she said brightly. A few Tharkans blinked in confusion. The Zynths rippled, unsure if it was an idiom or a threat. The Chancellor gestured to a seat at the circular table. "We are eager to avoid further misunderstandings between your people and the Empire. The regrettable incident on New Canaan." "Genocide," Holt corrected gently, "was a tragic miscommunication," the Chancellor continued without pause. "Had your colony simply complied with imperial directives, they'd still be alive?" Holt's tone remained conversational. "I'll note that for our next compliance seminar." She smiled pleasantly, and several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Elithrans, proud scholars of power, whispered that humans were fragile but unpredictable, like glass that sometimes refused to shatter. The Tharkans considered them sentimental. The Zynths, sensing something beneath Holt's calm surface, felt the faint hum of calculation and recoiled inward. Holt crossed one leg over the other, balancing the coffee mug on her knee. "Let's be practical. What does the Empire propose?" The Chancellor's frills twitched. "To ensure stability, the Terran Federation will surrender all colonies beyond the Sol boundary. You will remain confined to your native system. For your own safety, of course." Marin nodded, eyes bright. "For our safety. How thoughtful. We do have a saying back home. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Ever hear of hell?" A Tharkan delegate chuckled nervously. "A myth, yes? Some human superstition about eternal fire." "More of a metaphor," Holt said sweetly. "Though in practice, we've found it remarkably achievable." The Chancellor bristled. "General, I urge restraint. Your species stands on the brink of irrelevance. Do not make yourselves a nuisance." "Of course not," Holt replied. "Humans hate being nuisances. Historically, we prefer being problems." Silence rippled through the chamber. The Zynths collective mind flickered with alarm. The Chancellor forced a laugh. "A curious sense of humor, General. I trust your government will ratify this proposal. Most likely, Holt said, standing. But I'll need the exact coordinates of New Canaan's remains. Closure is important to us. It's a human thing. The Chancellor hesitated. That system is quarantined. There is nothing left. Still, Holt said, smiling wider. It's polite to send flowers to a grave, isn't it? When she left, the alien delegates murmured. Some pitted her species. Too emotional, too reckless. Others dismissed her as harmless, an overgrown mammal playing soldier among giants. Only the ZYNTH collective remained silent, their tendrils trembling with something akin to dread. Back aboard the Fair Warning, Holt stood before the viewport. Stars scattered like powdered sugar across the black. Reyes approached quietly. They won't give us the coordinates. Of course not, she murmured. They think grief makes us weak. He hesitated. Are we going to war? She turned to him, smile as gentle as before. Reyes, we're already at war. They just haven't realized which kind. He watched as she typed a sequence into her tablet. The screen flashed once. Operation Uncivilized, Phase 1. Psychological conditioning. Phase 1? He asked. Start small, she said. A whisper here, a rumor there. Make them doubt their sensors, their allies, their sense of superiority. Civilization is mostly trust, Reyes. Let's see what happens when we take that away. She returned to her coffee, now gone cold, and made a face. Terrible stuff when it's not fresh. Reminds me of the Elithran ambassador. Reyes chuckled despite himself. You think they'll see it coming? Not a chance, she said. They're scholars of logic, bureaucrats of order. They've forgotten how chaos feels. On Elithra Prime, the Chancellor sat alone in her chamber, reviewing the human's words. Her claws drummed against the desk. Something about that woman's calm unsettled her. She replayed the phrase. We prefer being problems. It was not bravado. It was a confession. Meanwhile, scattered across the galaxy, whispers began to spread through the lower ranks of the Empire. Reports of human ships seen where none should be. Intercepted transmissions of laughter, human laughter, echoing through abandoned channels. A merchant vessel claimed to find a drifting Terran probe broadcasting nothing but a single line of text. Politeness is temporary. The Chancellor dismissed the reports as superstition. Still, she ordered increased patrols along the Sol border. On the bridge of the Fair Warning, Marin Holt watched the stars rotate in their endless choreography. The universe was quiet again, for now. Her officers moved carefully, respectful of the silence that followed her composure. General, Reyes said softly. If I may, what happens when we stop playing Civilized? Holt looked out at the dark, her reflection faint against the stars. Then, she said, voice almost tender, we remind them what civilization was protecting them from. He nodded, unsure whether to feel pride or fear. Relax, Reyes, she added, lips curving. We'll still be polite. Right up until it's time not to be. She turned back to the viewport. The reflection of her mug floated beside her face, words gleaming faintly in the light of distant suns. World's nicest sociopath. Somewhere in the void, the first human scout ships shifted course toward the quarantine system of New Canaan 3. Their signal codes were scrambled, their intentions unreadable. The galaxy slept under its illusion of order, unaware that the humans had begun to sharpen their smiles. And far beyond the stars, a single woman whispered to the dark, "Playtime's over." The Fair Warning drifted in high orbit above a dead moon, its silhouette barely visible against the stars. Inside, General Marin Holt's war room glowed in soft amber, a deliberate choice meant to keep her officers calm while she plotted their next act of strategic mischief. Maps, projections, and alien psychological profiles shimmered in the air around her like a halo of dangerous ideas. The galaxy still thought humanity was licking its wounds. Holt knew that was the perfect time to smile and start rearranging the board. Reyes entered carrying 2 mugs. "Fresh coffee, ma'am. Real beans, not the synthesized kind." "Bless you," she said, taking one. If civilization collapses tomorrow, I want to die caffeinated. He smirked. The Elithrans have begun tightening their border patrols. Word is they're expecting retaliation. Retaliation is so predictable, Holt replied. We're going to be unpredictable. Let's give them something to gossip about. Across the table, Lieutenant Sato tapped through a holographic display. Ma'am, we've analyzed their communications network. It's almost insultingly organized. We could slip a virus in through their diplomatic channels. Too soon, Holt said. They need to feel safe first. The secret to chaos is timing, same as comedy. Her officers chuckled. The tone in the room was easy, deceptively casual, but every word carried the weight of intent. Each joke was a dagger sheathed in charm. Sato hesitated. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Always. After New Canaan, some of the crew want open war. They don't understand why we're playing polite. Holt swirled her coffee, watching the reflection ripple. Because we're not ready for war yet. We're preparing the stage. You don't walk into a fight, you invite your opponent to dance. The bridge lights dimmed as tactical maps came alive. Let's begin with whispers, she said. Subtle, plausible chaos. A rumor that human ships are appearing in restricted zones. A report of ghost transmissions. Let's make them see us where we aren't. Reyes nodded. Psychological warfare. Psychological honesty, Holt corrected. They want to believe we're unpredictable. Let's exceed their expectations. Within a week, strange things began to happen across the Empire. A Tharkan patrol intercepted a drifting probe broadcasting nothing but an old Earth song. You're so vain. Another fleet discovered encrypted transmissions looping a single human phrase. Just checking in. Elithran diplomats reported receiving small black boxes labeled, "From Earth, with love." When opened, they emitted the smell of fresh-baked cookies and uploaded unreadable code into their systems. No one could determine whether it was malware or a joke. In the imperial capital, Chancellor Valetha's temper began to fray. They are mocking us, she hissed to her aides. This humor is a weapon. Her intelligence minister, a long-necked Tharkan, clacked nervously. We've attempted to decode their behavior, Chancellor, but it defies logic. The humans are broadcasting laughter into our military channels. Laughter? Yes, Your Excellency. Specifically, something called a sitcom. We believe it may be a code. Valetha's crest stiffened. Of course it's a code. Nothing that irritating could be accidental. On the fair warning, Holt reviewed the intercepted transmissions with mild amusement. They're spending more time decoding jokes than guarding their borders, she said. Excellent progress. Reyes frowned. Won't they eventually retaliate? Oh, certainly, Holt said. But first, they'll argue about it. They're civilized. Debate comes before decision. We'll exploit that. Ma'am, Sato said carefully. Some of our allies think you're enjoying this. Holt smiled faintly. I enjoy watching bullies realize they picked the wrong species. The humor's just a side benefit. Still, beneath her wit, there was a tightening around her eyes. When she was alone in her quarters, she replayed the footage from New Canaan. The silent ruins, the flicker of small shapes that had once been children. Her face hardened each time. Every joke she made, every subtle strike, was built on that memory. She had no intention of letting the Empire know just how much it burned. By the fourth week, the Empire's intelligence community was in disarray. ZYNTH telepaths tried to read human minds but came back screaming, describing a chorus of laughter wrapped around teeth. Tharkan analysts proposed that humanity had ascended into collective madness. The Elithrans believed it was all a ruse, but none could prove it. At a clandestine meeting on Elithra Prime, the Chancellor addressed her council. We underestimated them, she admitted, each word an act of political agony. Their methods are inefficient yet devastating. It is as if they do not care whether we understand them. A ZYNTH translator pulsed softly. Perhaps comprehension was never their goal. Meanwhile, Holt's officers compiled reports of growing paranoia within the Empire. Trade fleets halted for security reviews. Border systems deployed fleets to defend against non-existent threats. Entire sectors were paralyzed by rumors. Reyes studied the data and exhaled. They're collapsing under their own fear. It's almost sad. Almost, Holt said, setting down her mug. But not quite. Sato hesitated. What's next, ma'am? Phase 2, Holt said. A little diplomacy. Within hours, she composed a transmission addressed to the Galactic Council. Her tone was impeccable, her diction courteous, every word a razor disguised as silk. Esteemed members of the Galactic Empire, humanity appreciates your concern for our safety. We regret to inform you that civilization is temporarily suspended for maintenance. Please direct all inquiries to your nearest crater. Yours sincerely, General Marin Holt. When the message hit the networks, the galaxy erupted. Half the Empire dismissed it as a prank. The other half scrambled their fleets. No one knew which interpretation would be more dangerous. The Chancellor stared at the message for several minutes before speaking. Suspend civilization? She whispered. What does that mean? Her aide swallowed hard. Perhaps it's metaphorical? Nothing about them is merely metaphorical, she snapped. Track their fleets. Now. But human fleets were not where they should have been. Patrols found only decoys, satellite husks transmitting jazz music into the void, empty carriers broadcasting the phrase, "Have a nice day." The Elithran's most advanced sensors picked up signatures that blinked in and out like cosmic laughter. The ZYNTHS grew restless. They have no pattern, their collective voice hummed. No center. They are many in one. They think sideways. By the time the Chancellor's command reached the frontier systems, several key shipyards had already gone dark, disabled not by bombs, but by their own automated defenses. Triggered through corrupted communication codes. Every attack was invisible, elegant, and accompanied by a cheerful human signature file reading, "Best regards." Reyes watched the report stream in, his expression shifting from awe to disbelief. You're dismantling them without firing a shot. Violence is noisy, Holt replied. And noise makes people listen. We're not ready for them to listen yet. Sato grinned. So, what do we call this stage of the plan? Charm offensive, Holt said. Heavy on the offensive. Even she had to laugh. Still, as the laughter faded, she grew quiet. We'll need to prepare for the moment they stop laughing. When they realize this isn't confusion, it's control. That's when they'll come for us. Reyes met her gaze. And when they do? Her voice was calm, almost kind. Then we stop pretending. Far across the stars, in the corridors of power, the phrase "smiling barbarians" began trending through the Empire's data channels. It was meant as an insult, but among frightened citizens it sounded more like a prayer. Back aboard the fair warning, Holt poured another cup of coffee. Phase 3, she murmured to herself. Time to teach them what politeness looks like when it stops being optional. Outside the viewport, the human fleet adjusted formation, their drives humming like a heartbeat. Somewhere deep within the communication grid of the Empire, 1,000 quiet programs woke up at once. They carried no weapons, only instructions. As the first stars flickered in unnatural patterns across the void, Reyes whispered. They'll think it's a sign. Holt's smile was almost tender. Good. Everyone needs something to believe in before the lights go out. And as the human ships disappeared into the darkness, the galaxy began to feel, for the first time, what fear truly sounded like: polite, patient, and softly laughing. The galaxy held its breath as the Empire's fleets mobilized. The Elithrans called it a containment operation. The humans called it predictable. Deep within the Perseus maelstrom, a volatile storm of charged gas and collapsing gravity wells, the fair warning waited in the calm eye of chaos. Its hull shimmered faintly, invisible to most sensors, while inside, General Marin Holt leaned over a tactical display that looked more like abstract art than war. Every ship, every signal, was a brushstroke. She intended the masterpiece to be fatal. Reyes stood beside her, arms folded. They're coming, ma'am. Full strength. Every fleet they've got. Good, Holt said. It's nice to be taken seriously. He frowned. You're sure they'll take the bait? They already have. They think this is where we'll make our desperate stand. That's the beauty of ego, it makes them predictable. Across the bridge, Lieutenant Sato monitored incoming data. Their lead formation just entered the maelstrom. Sensors show extreme magnetic distortion. Perfect, Holt murmured. Keep transmitting those distress signals. Let them think we're trapped and panicking. Fear makes commanders stupid. The maelstrom churned like a living thing, its electric veins pulsing blue and white. The alien armadas dove in after the phantom human fleets, their formations fracturing under the storm's pressure. Inside the command carrier Vigilant Star, Chancellor Valeth watched the chaos unfold from her throne of reinforced crystal. Find them, she snarled. I want that Terran general alive. Her subordinates obeyed with fervor bordering on desperation. Yet no matter how they scanned, the humans remained phantoms, their one moment, gone the next. False distress calls lured cruisers into gravitational pockets that tore them apart. Jamming signals turned allies into enemies. Valeth began to sense that she had not entered a battlefield, but a labyrinth designed by a sadist. On the fair warning, the crew worked in eerie silence. Holt's fingers traced invisible lines through the holomap. Phase 3 begins when the core of their fleet reaches this point, she said. Once they cross the event plane, they're ours. Reyes hesitated. We're about to destroy half the Empire's military, ma'am. Holt's eyes were steady. They destroyed children. We're just balancing the equation. For a moment, her calm cracked, grief flickering behind the armor of discipline. Then she straightened. Signal the fleet. Begin the dance. Across the maelstrom, dormant human ships flickered to life. Stealth cruisers materialized from distortion fields, their drives synchronized in perfect harmony. They didn't attack directly, they simply moved, circling, vanishing, reappearing. Their paths bent the Empire's formations inward like a tightening noose. In the Vigilant Star, Valeth realized too late what was happening. They're hurting us, she shouted. Reverse course. But the maelstrom was no longer stable. Holt's engineers had seeded the nebula with controlled detonation arrays, small fusion nodes disguised as mining probes. When activated, they turned the storm into a living minefield. Now, Holt said quietly. The nebula ignited. Light bloomed like a newborn sun, swallowing ships whole. Waves of radiation danced through the maelstrom, shredding shields and scattering fleets. The Elithran's precision formations disintegrated into chaos. Reyes whispered, Dear God. God had his chance, Holt said. Now it's ours. Human vessels darted between energy surges, untouched. They moved with impossible coordination, guided by predictive algorithms that Holt herself had designed years ago, when she still believed diplomacy could prevent war. Now that same technology choreographed destruction. Sato's voice trembled. We've got multiple surrender signals. Should we? No, Holt said softly. Record them. Then cut the channel. Across the comms, fragments of alien voices bled through static. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to beg. Each plea was drowned in the roar of collapsing light. On the Vigilant Star, Valeth clung to her console as the ship's structure groaned. They planned this, she rasped. All of it. A ZYNTH telepath beside her convulsed. Their minds are terrifying. They planned centuries ahead. Every war, every treaty, practice. They learned us. Holt opened a galaxy-wide broadcast. Her image appeared on every surviving screen, a calm human face framed by fire. To the citizens of the Galactic Empire, she began, tone even, almost cordial. You burned a world that sang lullabies in English. You called it correction. You called it civilization. I call it hubris. Her words cut through static and debris. You see, humans tried to be good neighbors. We learned your laws, your manners, your definitions of civilized conduct. We even smiled when you insulted us. But every time you looked down on us, we took notes. She paused, letting the silence linger like a loaded weapon. Now you've met the results of our studies. Consider this a practical demonstration in applied human behavior. Her eyes narrowed slightly. We will not rebuild your empire. We will not rule you. We will simply remove you from the equation until balance returns. Valeth screamed into the calm. You'll doom the galaxy. Holt smiled faintly. We already did. When you killed New Canaan. Then she ended the transmission. The storm reached its crescendo. Fractured fleets collided, their reactors overloading in synchronized failure. The maelstrom became a graveyard of glittering fragments. Holt stood motionless as the display dimmed, the once vibrant red dots of enemy ships fading to gray. Reyes spoke softly. It's done. Not yet, she said. Transmit the coordinates of every Imperial communications hub to the network. He hesitated. That'll expose us too. That's the point, Holt replied. They need to see who ended them. The lie of human weakness dies today. Sato's hands shook as she executed the command. Across the surviving Imperial worlds, holographic skies filled with the same image. Holt's calm face, her voice steady and terrible. Humans will no longer play civilized, she declared. We remember every insult, every child's scream, every treaty signed with a poisoned smile. You wanted savages? Congratulations. You built them yourselves. When the final echoes of her message faded, the galaxy fell silent. Ships drifted like ashes. Reyes finally exhaled. You realize they'll never forgive us. Forgiveness isn't the goal, Holt said, eyes on the stars. Understanding is. Outside, the storm began to subside. The once turbulent maelstrom glowed softly now, its edges shimmering like the scar of a wound reluctantly healing. Sato's voice broke the silence. Ma'am, what if they're right? What if we've become what we hated? Holt turned toward her. Then maybe that's what civilization was hiding all along. The bridge lights flickered, steadying again. The fair warning drifted free of the dying storm, alone among the remnants of an empire. Holt set her mug down beside the console, the ceramic chipped, the inscription half-faded. Reyes looked at her, voice low. What now? She watched the wreckage disappear into the void. Now we see who survives. In the distance, the faint glimmer of new fleets appeared. Neither Imperial nor Terran. Opportunists, scavengers, witnesses. The next act was already writing itself, and Holt knew the curtain hadn't fallen yet. She lifted her mug, tasted the cold coffee and grimaced. Still terrible, she muttered. Then, almost to herself, maybe that's fitting. The Perseus maelstrom burned for a week before the light finally died. When the storm cleared, it left only silence, cold, complete, and strangely dignified. The Galactic Empire no longer existed. Its fleets had become drifting monuments to arrogance, its command worlds reduced to static-laced whispers. Across the void, the news spread faster than radiation. The humans had done it. They had ended an empire without claiming its throne. Entire civilizations paused their routines, listening to the new, fragile quiet that followed humanity's smile. Aboard the fair warning, the bridge lights glowed low. Most systems were running on half-power. The crew moved quietly, like mourners in a cathedral. General Marin Holt stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind her back, staring at the broken constellations that once marked Imperial territory. Reyes approached, hesitant. We're receiving transmissions from surviving colonies. They're asking what happens next. Holt didn't turn. Tell them to breathe. That's enough for now. He nodded slowly. And the Empire? She finally looked at him, her gaze steady. There is no Empire. Only ghosts that don't know they're dead yet. Reyes hesitated before speaking again. The Council on Earth wants an update. They're calling this a victory. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. Victory is such a strange word. It always sounds like someone's trying to convince themselves. He studied her face, lines etched not by age but by exhaustion. You did what you had to. I did what I promised, she said. That's not the same thing. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them. Holt finally turned back to the viewport.
Do you know what bothers me, Reyes?
Not the destruction, not even the deaths. It's that we warned them politely. We told them, over and over, to stop. And they laughed. We were civilized once.
I think I missed that.
He didn't know how to respond, so he stood quietly beside her. Outside, debris glimmered in the starlight like confetti from a funeral. Down in the communications bay, technicians replayed intercepted transmissions from the shattered empire. The voices were brittle with disbelief. Some demanded vengeance, others prayed to old gods, and a few simply whispered the same phrase. The humans are smiling. Every recording ended the same way, with silence. When Holt entered the bay, the crew straightened instinctively. She waved them back to their work and picked up a headset. A channel still flickered with faint signal noise, an Elithran broadcast trying to reach any surviving command. "This is General Marin Holt of the Terran Federation," she said evenly. "Identify yourself." Static, then a voice, thin, shaking. "I am Chancellor Valeth. Or what remains of her. You've destroyed everything." Holt's expression didn't change. "You destroyed New Canaan." A pause. "They were irrelevant. You've condemned billions for a single colony." "No," Holt said softly. "You condemned billions the moment you decided someone else's pain was irrelevant. We just finished your story for you."
Valeth's voice faltered. "What will you do now? Conquer? Rule?"
Holt exhaled slowly. "No. We don't want your worlds. We just wanted you to stop pretending you were the only civilized ones." There was a faint, bitter laugh on the other end. "And now? You think yourselves better?" "Not better," Holt said. "Just honest." She ended the call. The silence that followed felt heavier than any explosion. Later, in her quarters, she poured herself a drink that wasn't coffee for once. The liquor burned, grounding her in something human. The door chimed, and Reyes entered without waiting for permission. "We've received a message from the ZYNTH remnants," he said. "They're offering mediation. They want to rebuild something new." Holt considered it. A council of survivors, all swearing they've learned their lesson. "I suppose it's a start." "They're terrified of us," Reyes said quietly. "As they should be," Holt replied. "Fear's a better teacher than treaties." He shifted awkwardly. "You sound like them now." She looked at him sharply, then sighed. "Maybe I do. That's the cost, isn't it? To stop monsters, you start borrowing their tools. The trick is remembering to put them down before they own you." He met her gaze. "Do you think you can?" Her smile was tired, real. "Ask me tomorrow." For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to rest. When she woke, Earth's transmission grid had lit up with questions, debates, and celebrations. Some called her a hero. Others whispered that humanity had become what it feared most. She didn't read any of it. Instead, she went to the observation deck and watched the sunrise over Elithra Prime, the Empire's jewel world, now quiet, its cities flickering with the first hesitant lights of recovery. A few days later, Holt authorized Operation Uncivilized's final directive. It wasn't a conquest but an exodus. Human forces began to withdraw from occupied systems, leaving behind power vacuums and encrypted data packages labeled simply, "For your consideration." Inside each was the same message: "We'll be watching. Behave yourselves." The effect was immediate. Some species tried to form alliances to contain humanity's influence. Others built shrines to Terran strength, mistaking fear for reverence. Trade resumed in fits and starts, but no one dared provoke Earth again. Even pirates began greeting human patrols with elaborate courtesy. Reyes approached Holt one evening as she reviewed the withdrawal reports. "You could have ruled them all, you know," he said. "No one could stop you." "Ruling's messy," she replied. "Besides, empires are just waiting rooms for collapse. We've proven that." He smiled faintly. "So what are we then?" "An unpleasant reminder," she said. "The universe's bad conscience." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind that sounded almost like relief. When the fair warning finally set course for Sol, The crew gathered on the observation deck. The stars streaked past, each one a story they'd rewritten. Holt stood before them, posture steady but eyes distant. "You all did your duty," she said. "You'll hear people call this victory, revenge, justice. Ignore them. What we did was none of those things. We taught a lesson. Whether it was worth the price, time will decide." Reyes watched her closely. "And you, ma'am? What will you do?" She lifted her mug, refilled with coffee of course, and smiled faintly. "Start over. Maybe remember what being civilized feels like." As the ship slipped into jump space, Holt stared into the kaleidoscopic swirl of light beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, the ruins of the Empire glowed faintly, and for a moment, she thought she saw the faces of New Canaan's children smiling back through the void. She whispered something only the stars could hear. Weeks later, on a distant archive world, an alien historian uncovered a Terran data fragment buried within the wreckage of an Imperial server. It contained a single document, titled The Rules of Civilization. The historian read the final line aloud to the empty air. "Rule 1. Don't poke the species that invented both revenge stories and coffee." The words lingered, absurd and terrifying in their simplicity. Back on Earth, in a quiet room overlooking the Atlantic, Holt sat by a window with her mug. The dawn light crept across her desk, illuminating an old photograph of the New Canaan colony. Children laughing, a blue sky untouched by war. She traced their faces with her finger. "We stopped playing nice," she murmured. "Let's hope it was worth it." Outside, the city stirred awake. Ordinary people, oblivious to the shadow their species had cast across the stars. Holt smiled softly. Humanity would rebuild, argue and laugh again. Maybe, just maybe, they'd learn to be civilized once more, this time without needing permission.